Okay, it is midnight. I am live. We are here at midnight. Ready to answer some questions. I got some really good questions in for this one. I'm going to let people show up. I got to give a quick shout out. I was just talking to one of my heroes, Ed Calderon, Ed's Manifesto here on Instagram. This guy is actually a legit hero, not just in the occult scene. But, he just schooled me on so much that I did not know about what's really, really happening in sort of the occult underworld right now. And if you're not following him, definitely give Ed's Manifesto a follow. This man is the real deal in so many ways, in so many things. My brother Ghost Mode's in the chat. Good to see you, man. Welcome on this Saturday night. I know you're probably not far from the compound and the altars right now. I'm going to jump into questions in a minute here. But I figured let's let the people who ask the questions show up in the chat. I've been out this evening, man. I have had a busy day collecting materials. I was at the farm this morning. We buy our meat right from the farm here where they, raise the animals. And I got myself a bunch of beef tongues, a pig heart, and someone had asked a question about that. So I'll save the explanations on those and the workings associated for when they show up so I can answer that question. And then tonight I've been out, as I posted on my live, collecting business dirt. I know some people have seen Witch Dr. Alex posting about bank dirt, which is that 13 bank dirt is an excellent money charm. But business dirt, 7 business dirt is likewise excellent. And man, I had staked out a bunch of businesses here to get dirt from. And some of them moved or closed, which is a bummer because I was going to go to the corporate headquarters of Whole Foods, the local headquarters of Twitter. They had closed. But I did get this dirt, which I am very pleased with. Badoom. Google dirt. Yes. That one I've been after for a long time. The other one I got is from Level 3 Communications, which nobody knows about, right? But they are literally the crossroads of the internet in the Western U.S. So as far as we're thinking crossroads, we're thinking information, we're thinking all this good stuff. I figured they were a good place to start and get some dirt from. So forgive me, I'm in my car because I'm out doing field work, but I did turn the engine off so it's not so loud. I'm going to go ahead and pull up questions, and we'll see, people hopefully will tune in as we get them. Let's see. Some of these are pretty cool. How about this one? Are there other nature cycles you can work with other than the moon? Absolutely. First and foremost, you can look at the planets always, right? There's always astrological transits, and you can look at the current placements and conjunctions to your own chart or to the chart of what you're working on, the person you're working on, or if you're working with a business or a place, you can draw a chart on that. So there's those astrological cycles, absolutely. The other very obvious cycle you can work with in terms of astrology is what's called planetary hours. And this is a very, very old concept, but that, each one of the days of the week is ruled by a different energy, right? And it actually crosses between traditions, the associated energies, and it's a good way to find how different traditions associate. But in English, our days of the week are all named after actually mostly the Norse gods, but it's the same. So Monday is named after the moon. The Norse god is Mani, but still it's the moon. It's the moon god. Tuesday is named after Tu or Tyr, the Norse god Tyr, and associated with Mars. Wednesday they associate with Odin or Wotan, so hence Wednesday, and that we associate with Mercury. Thursday, obviously they associate with Thor, which we connect with Jupiter. Friday they associate with Frey, which for us is Venus, or in the Greco-Roman traditions is Venus. Saturday, we actually still have the Greco-Roman term Saturn. So Saturday, we got Saturn, and Sunday obviously is the sun. So those are the days, and you can work with those days. But additionally, at sunrise of that day starts the planetary hours, and they cycle through all the 7 planets, I think 2 or 3 times in a day. Oh, actually, there's 24 hours, so it's got to be 3.5 times. And then they go to the next day. So you can download apps for it, you can look it up online, but you can find the planetary hours, and you can absolutely use those in your workings. And then if you use the correct planetary hour or on the associated planetary day, that's like the way to really nail that energy. So that was a really good question. Of course, you can work with the seasons as well. Those are a nature cycle. Another way that is kind of like an old school hoodoo way of working with time is the hands of the clock. When the hands of the clock are both rising, meaning they're sort of in the second half of the hour, and it's between 6 and 12. So when the hands of the clock are both rising, that's the time to do good work, beneficial work, what have you. And when they're both falling, that's the time to cast away and do curses and things like that. So that's a great question there. I appreciate the great questions. What else do we got here? Some just fun ones. Favorite decks at the moment. I always like the Deck of the Bastards. It's one of my favorite decks. It combines the major arcana of the Rider-Waite. It combines the major arcana of the Atelier and some of the older Italian decks, and the minor arcana of the Rider-Waite. Because those old Italian decks don't really have minor arcana sort of illustrated. They just have like the Seven of Wands will just be a picture of 7 sticks. So having the illustrations like they have in Rider-Waite brings in more of the symbolism. Hello to everyone tuning in. So I like that deck quite a lot. I have personally been reading mostly with this guy, just because this is the deck I've been carrying. And I'm just kind of getting used to it. It's called the Hermetic Tarot. I like it a lot. I like the symbolism a lot. It has a lot of cool elements. It includes a lot of Kabbalistic elements. It includes a lot of the planetary elements, some alchemical elements. What I don't love about it is that it's black and white, so you lose the color symbolism. But otherwise, I do like it. Also, the minor arcana are kind of hard to explain the symbols of if someone's not very educated. Like the Five of Cups, it doesn't have a scene at all. It's just got the 5 cups, So I do like reading with Rider-Waite when I'm reading for someone, because you can point to the pictures and it tells a story that I think almost everyone kind of understands. So I do like that deck. Other decks, I like that Golden Thread Tarot aesthetically quite a lot. I don't own it. It might be the next deck I pick up. But yeah, there's and I also don't read like Lenormand or Oracle cards or Angel cards or anything like that. So I never really work with those decks. But there are some very, very nice ones out there. Let's do some more questions, and then I see questions popping up in chat, so that's cool. Let's see. How do you feel about altars protected by glass to keep pets and little ones out? Limited space. This is something you see on street altars a lot, especially in Mexico and things. Well, they'll have it behind glass. I guess I kind of want to know what you mean by behind glass, because you want to be able to access that altar, right? Like, it shouldn't, if it's glass that you can get through, you know what I mean? And if you can access it, then that's fine if you close it up or whatever. The main thing is that you want to be able to physically interact with the altar. So if it prevents you from having your physical interaction with it, I would take another approach. But that said, if it's just something that you kind of can put there to protect it, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Maybe if you're in the chat, please ask another, clarifying question, and maybe I can explain a little better. What else we got here? From the same person. I know you're busy. May I contact you to see if you have oils and things? Email, okay? Yes, please email. It's hoodoomoses@gmail. I don't have really anything in stock. I'm really making stuff to order now. I have some odds and ends. So yeah, that's. But definitely email me and we can figure something out. And a glass cabinet door that you can open and sit at the altar. Perfect. You do see many altars in other traditions that are set up in that way, actually, and that's totally appropriate. There's nothing at all wrong with that. Let's see what we got here. This one was interesting. Is it normal to be drawn to a mysticism that aren't ethically yours? And I wasn't sure if they meant to type ethnically and it was a typo, so I'll answer both questions maybe. So we'll start with it as it's written. That's not ethically yours, meaning that you don't have like a moral or ethical connection to it. If it doesn't feel right to you, you should absolutely not partake in it. You may be drawn to it out of curiosity. That's pretty normal. But if it doesn't feel right to you, obviously you should not partake. It's not for your spirit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and maybe guess that it was a typo and they meant ethnically yours. And so maybe they're referring to a tradition that's from another culture. And that's something that we have seen from the beginning of human history, from recorded history. In Roman era, we saw, the people who would be exposed to Persian culture and become Zoroastrians. Certainly in North Africa, we saw all sorts of interesting traditions mixing. And this is very common. It's part of human nature. So I would not say that it's abnormal. Now we have the internet where you get exposed to so much more. Every day you can be exposed to 10 new cultures versus before you had to travel for weeks and weeks and reach a crossroads and find someone else who was traveling, who shared an interest, But now we do it in minutes, over and over, seconds, So it's not abnormal. It's common throughout human history. It is sort of the story of culture. And, you got to realize, like, your ethnicity is pretty new, in the history of the human line, right? Like, we all came from these fundamental, culture centers originally, and those ancestors mixed. So, if it's something that you're like, you don't feel genuine about, then you should probably not engage with it. If it's a culture you're not in touch with, and the whole culture, the food, the music, the people, everything, then you should be in touch with that culture before you try to approach their spirits. On a personal level, you gotta, the way culture works, authentic culture, not fucking American consumer culture, but it's, every part of it connects. The religion and the music and the food and the folkways and the medicine, it's all integrated. And so you shouldn't try to approach those spirits unless you're engaging in the culture, I think, because you're not going to be able to appreciate them. You're not going to be able to connect with them as fully. So I hope that's helpful on that one. And I hope I answered the actual intended question. Cigar smoke for blessing. Can you discuss? I can discuss. I'm very happy to. And I know that this was asked by someone who we did a misa for, and we sat in her living room and smoked a lot of cigars. So I think a worthwhile question, and one we should answer. So, tobacco comes to us from Native American traditions, and it's always used for friendship and blessing. We use it in conjure for influence as well. You see it certainly in Latin America, used for influence and things like that. So when cigar smoke's used for a blessing, is to consecrate it. There's a few aspects to the symbolism, but grandfather tobacco is what tobacco is called. So tobacco is kind of seen as this very influential sort of robust masculine energy. And so it is used to bless. And if you think also what most of us know, even in grade school, about Native Americans, pass the peace pipe, right? So this was tobacco used sort of as a friendship offering and to show equality, right? And so we use cigar smoke, we use tobacco smoke in similar ways. The symbol of the cigar, obviously a phallic symbol, so it kind of is always a source of giving energy. Right, so when we want to energize, whether it's a statue or, I know this person in particular saw us doing really blowing tobacco smoke on everything when we're doing baths, when we're doing whatever. It's to energize it, to bless it, and smoke is always used to consecrate. So these are sort of the main elements that come into play in using it. As far as, and I don't know what aspects you were interested in having me discuss. How we do it, obviously you turn the cigar backwards and you blow, you blow through the ember out the mouthpiece. So you're sort of giving the cigar smoke to it. And we see cigars used as common symbols among sort of powerful figures throughout Latin America and really wherever tobacco is grown. So it's kind of an association with that. Let's see what else we got here. So there are some heavy questions in here. So I'm going through the light ones easier. Or sooner. Okay. Oh man, questions are still popping in. This is cool. How do you find your deity? Usually, your deity finds you. It's very uncommon to go seek your deity. Meaning, whatever spirit comes to you through a family tradition that you were raised in, you should work with, of course, to start with. If you're referring to, like, how do you find, like, your Orisha or something like that, like, who has your head, that's not something you can do on your own. That's something that you have to go to someone who is properly trained, properly initiated, properly in a tradition, and there's a process to going through this, divination and things like this. So the spirits you work with, so we all have spirits and guides and sort of our ancestors, and also ascended masters is what they're called, so spiritual figures who have gone up that resonate with us. And we also have, the spirits that will just work with us, the saints and the other spirits, because our nature and our energy works with them. It pleases them, or it's like theirs, And so, in many traditions, one specific will claim your head, right? Like you're a child of them. But again, that's not something you find out yourself. That's something that if you want to seek, you can ask people in those traditions, and they can lead you that way. But it's not something you can Google, you know? So, as far as how they usually come to you, in terms of generally spirits, when you're in meditation, when you're in prayer, when you're attuned to spirit, you'll see their images very often, and this is where studying and knowing what's associated with whom is very helpful. You'll see their colors, you'll see their things, their associations, and you start to lean into it, like I would say, like you start to pay more attention to it, and then you see more of them, and then indeed it'll become really clear who's talking to you. That's usually how it goes. A couple good questions from the same person. How do I get rid of evil people who uses your power? Well, you may be referring to like what we call psychic vampirism, which is where someone sort of latches onto you and feeds off your energy. There's no real easy way for like an individual who's not a experienced practitioner to get rid of it. The best thing to do is cut that person out of your life. A way I recommend dealing with those people if you do have some experience, and I'm not going to give the working now, but you can find out about it. It's called a mirror box. And someone like that, you put them in a mirror box so they just drain themselves. So they can't drain anyone else or hurt anyone else. And real quick, what a mirror box is, you build a box, you have a wood box, you put mirrors on all 6 inner surfaces, mirrors that you have never looked into, that has never caught the reflection of your face, which is its own trick. And then you, whoever is doing it to you, either put a name paper of them or a doll of them in the box with the cursing herbs. You seal that up, go float it down a river. And the whole working here, but that's the basic nature of it. And the idea is that their efforts get reflected back on them, because there is no way you can engage with them when they're sucking you dry and stay safe. So I hope that answered the question, and that's what you were describing. If there's a follow-up, how do you know deity comes to you? Well, so a couple ways that could be, that I could take that question. One, how do you know that it's genuinely deity as opposed to a trickster, which is a very good question. You have to ask it to identify itself. You ask it to give you its symbols. You ask it to give you its names. How you'll communicate with deity or how you'll communicate with spirit is different for everybody, depending on your personal faculties, right? Like some people have clairvoyance, they see things. Some people have clairaudience, they hear. Some people have clairsentience, they feel. Some people, I have claircognizance, I know things. It's like I've read it before. But stuff I've never read. I just know it like I've read it. So how they come to you is going to depend on you, just like your normal senses. Some people see really well, some people smell really well, some people have good hearing, some people have bad hearing, So same. So your senses are going to be your own, but whatever sense you interact with spirit in, you ask them to verify, ask them to prove it. Just like if you live in a bad neighborhood and someone knocks at your door and says they're the cops, you better ask for a fucking badge, and you can ask them. You can call the police and make sure that they send someone to your house, right? So that's kind of the same approach, right? Like ask for verification always. They'll never hesitate like that. How to crush your enemies? This is a good question. I gotta ask first though. And folks, excuse me, it's getting chilly here. I got to turn the car on, so you're going to hear some beeping and some noise. But how to crush your enemies? Okay, so first of all, you got to know enemies is a real big word. Most of us don't have enemies. An enemy is someone who wants to kill you if they see you. That said, if you've got real enemies, there are psalms you can say. I'm not going to pull them up right now. I'm not going to pull out my book of psalms and start flipping through. But there are psalms. There's about 5 different psalms used to defeat your enemies. And if you DM me, I'll give them to you. So that's the most common, right? Because if you're working with the psalms, you're working with God, you're working with holy powers, you're not going to go too far. One of the questions about crushing your enemies, or one of the issues about the question of crushing your enemies, is very easy that someone's not really your enemy. They're someone you don't like, but not enemy level status. And if you crush them, you've gone too far, and now you have to pay the consequences for doing too much, right? So, you have to be on point and realize that If you commit more aggressive energy than a situation calls for, that's always going to come back on you. Okay? So, crushing your enemies may not be... Whoop, drop the phone there. Crushing your enemies may not be what you're trying to do. Protect yourself, maybe? Yeah, there's protection work to do. Get rid of people you don't like? Yeah, there's definitely work for that. Crushing your enemies? You better have some, like, real enemies that really deserve some crushing if you're going to take that approach, in my opinion. Okay. What is the best way to start reading tarot? Man, this person's got some good questions. The best way is pick up some cards. Get yourself a Rider-Waite deck and just start studying the cards. There's some really good courses out there that'll teach you what the cards mean, and you should study that. You should study the numerology. You should study the symbolism. You should study the color symbolism. Paul Foster Case has some excellent books on this stuff. But also, there's some cool methods of just like meditating on that scene and placing yourself and connecting energetically with the scene in that card. And you should use all these things. I don't recommend only doing any one of these things. You really do have to know all the symbols. And then once you've got those basics, you can learn the astrological connections to the card, and you can learn the elemental connections of the cards. And then you start to understand the full symbolism. It's a very, very, very rich set of symbols. It's not just the pictures on the card. Everything refers to something else, and there are things that there's not even an image of that you have to just know that it refers to. So the best way to start is get yourself a deck of cards, start looking at them, and every day try to learn more about your cards. One of the essentials, like, you should not even fucking try to read tarot if you can't close your eyes and run yourself through the whole deck of just at least the Rider-Waite. Just close your eyes and see. First of all, know the cards in order. Know the very important, but then also be able to picture them one by one. What's the picture on the card? What's the posture that person has? What color are they wearing? What are they holding in their hands? What else is in the scene? You got to do that, and you can spend a week at a time meditating on each card. That's a common method, or you could just dive in. But you have to learn all the cards, all 78 cards. You should be able to know what's in that picture, and then you're ready to really start getting into reading and then connecting more on that. Oh gosh, we got this same person. Great questions all over the place. I'm going to just keep fielding them. How do you clean your altar? You take the old shit off it and you wash it down. No, I'm just kidding. I move the offerings. Obviously, I remove and place in nature or place wherever I'm offering it. I wash the altar with agua florida, with Florida water. I sweep it up if there's always ashes and things like that. That I just... So for like instead of using like a cleaning spray or whatever, it's agua florida, and if I gotta use paper towel or whatever I gotta use, candle wax I usually leave there to build up. I usually burn my candles on top of each other, but if it's a spill or something, I just clean it. Ashes again, I take off. The water that's left on the altar, depending on what altar it is, I'll do something different with it. If it's a protection, St. Michael, San Miguel, I'll pour on my front step. If it's a prosperity thing, then I'll put it in a house plant. So things like this. My Santa Muerte water, I actually offer around a candle and I evaporate it up. So it just depends. I think that's what you mean by clean the altar. So I think I answered that correctly. How do you do skull magic? I don't. Skull magic can mean a few different things. The way I take it to mean is like Palamayombe and like working with the skull and Nganga. That's not, if you don't know what I'm talking about, or if that's not what you're asking about or whatever, even if it is, not my place to tell you. I'm not going to tell you about that. You go find a tata who wants to teach you and go learn from them. Other skull magic, we have European grimoire magic with skulls. The most common use of a skull is what's called an oracular head, where you'll keep the skull on the table and you sort of use it as a vehicle for spirit to communicate with you, sort of telepathically. I don't do that, but that's a very, very old and common across traditions way of working with either a head or a skull. We hear of the head of John the Baptist doing this. The head of Orpheus in the ancient Greek mysteries was used for this. So this is like a common way of using a head or a skull. As far as skull magic, other than that, you're probably in an area that is not in a tradition I work in. Same person. How to clean your mirror from Does Who Mirror You. So if someone's done like I'm hoping I'm understanding this question right. Like if someone does a mirror work on you, how to break that? Is that what you're asking? You actually do a reflection back on them, and you specify in your reflection or what's called a revocation that it should work against revocations. So I actually did one of these the other night with St. Michael, San Miguel, and that's what you do. Let's see. How to get rid of a leech. Does who try to leech off your deity and altar. Oh, so if you have a bad spirit around, this is why I always say the most important tool you can have in your spiritual tool set is an iron knife. You just chase that motherfucker out of there with an iron knife, burn some saltpeter, get some salt around. Now that's going to chase away all spirits. Okay? So that's fine. Then everybody leaves. Then before you invite your spirits back, okay, dual working with whoever you work with for protection, in my case St. Michael, San Miguel, to protect that place, and then call back specifically and only the spirits you want. That and protection is very important. You shouldn't be opening up for spiritual work without having your protection in place. And I assume you mean like a spiritual leech, not a person. If it's a person, tell them to get the fuck out of your house. What else do we got here? The man himself, Mr. Ed Calderon. What's the most interesting thing you've ever found walking around on the street? Man. I seen a building on fire. That was pretty interesting. As far as like stuff, dead pigeons. 2 dead pigeons was a weird thing I saw. 3 dead pigeons, just laying next to each other. And it didn't look like an offering, but they were laid out. Like it looked almost like an offering how they were laid out, but they weren't prepared like an offering, so to speak. I seen a homeless lady carrying some ridiculous sign with playing the Rocky music on a boombox. I've seen some crazy shit walking around on the street, man. I don't know, spiritually speaking, however, I think perhaps the most interesting thing I've seen, this is not in the U.S., but in Israel, like in Jerusalem, it's old, and there's a lot of spirits there, and I've definitely seen some just old and venerable and potent spiritual forces walking around Jerusalem. And as far as secular things, the most interesting thing I've found, I don't know. That's a tough question, Ed. I want to ask the same to you, though, so I'll put it right back at you. One time we found a fake baseball full of heroin. That was kind of an interesting thing to come across. What else we got here? Okay, so suggestions to rid yourself of a stalker that isn't a freezer or a sour jar. First of all, you're absolutely right. A freezer or a sour jar is not appropriate. So I'm glad you said that. I'm pausing because I want to say, first and foremost, get a fucking restraining order, okay? Like, don't just go with a spiritual solution. It's something that could be like a real-life physical problem, okay? That said, once you've done that, and you need spiritual protection as well, red brick dust is a good protection. Put that at your front door, your back door, windows, entrances to your house. Railroad spikes. Bless them for St. Michael. Make a fire. Get overproof rum and light it on fire. Say the prayer to St. Michael. Put the railroad spikes in there. Hang that over your door after they're cool enough to touch, right? Don't grab them when they're red hot. For a stalker specifically, though, and those are general protection things. For a stalker specifically, I'm going to say use a skull candle. A purple skull candle. What a skull candle does... Let me step back. A stalker is someone who's obsessed. It's a mental thing. It's not necessarily a physical thing, right? They're not trying to get at you because they want money or something like this. They're obsessed. So what we use a skull candle for is to change someone's thoughts. And a purple skull candle is to control their thoughts. Purple's to control, for power. So you make a purple skull candle, you buy a purple skull candle, and you'll load it. You'll load it with either their personal concerns or a name paper for them. And by loaded, I mean you either cut or melt out the wax in the back so you can put it in the middle, and then you melt the wax over it again. And you'll put herbs in it to get them away. You'll put spicy herbs, hot pepper, cayenne pepper, black pepper's good. Salt's more for spirits than people, but you can put that in there. Garlic, anything that pushes away. Sulfur, gross smells. Vandal root or valerian root, things like this. And then you'll baptize the candle in their name. Get some holy water, put a cross on it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I baptize you, whatever the stalker's name is. And then you burn the candle and talk to that skull as if it's that person, okay? Now, other things you can do is you can take the eyes of the skull. You could block them so they can't see you. You know what I mean? You can take the mouth of the skull and keep it shut, or if you want them to say something, you put a paper with that in the mouth of the skull. Things like this. So that's the general way I'd approach it. Again, I hesitate to give you a specific working because you got to know the specific situation. Okay, I got to read Ed's response here with the strangest thing he's seen on the street. A set of identical twins fighting over a red balloon. It popped and both of them started crying. Huh. Wow, that's really crazy, Ed. I'll let everyone else in chat read that. You want to know a crazy story that kind of somehow relates to that, dude? So when I was 14, I had a near-death experience. I got hit by a guy who fell asleep driving a cargo van. His daughter, and he jumped the curb and hit me. His daughter had gotten killed by a guy who fell asleep driving a cargo van and jumped the curb. So similarly crazy vehicular death-related thing. This is a fun little chat we have going on here. All right, I'm going to go back. This person has asked some great questions. Thank you for your feedback. When did you know magic was for you? I mean, I've been doing this stuff since I was a fucking kid. I mean, as soon... I see it in my own daughter where she just knows... There's stuff she just knows, man. She said to me the other day, I think right hand's a boy and left hand's a girl. That's like a very deep occult principle. And this kid's 4 years old and she just said it to me. And I said, where'd you learn that? Did you learn that at school? She said, no, I just always knew it. So similar thing, like I just always knew certain things, certain esoteric principles and things like that. And then as soon as I started learning about religion, my interest was immediately in the spiritual aspect and in magical workings, the spiritual workings. So, I mean, I bought my first tarot cards. I wasn't even driving yet, It's always been a fascination of mine, and it's part of my culture too. That we called it superstition, but at the same time, it's you do this to get this result. It's very, very similar. For me personally, when I started working with like the way I started working, when I was a kid, I was maybe 9 years old, and I had nightmares real bad, which is very common for spiritually in tune people. Nightmares very, very bad. And I used to say prayers before bed, and that kept them off. But then I learned a shoe trick, and I did that shoe trick, and it worked, and I never looked back. That was the first hoodoo trick I learned. What's the most evil spirits you felt or deal with? I don't personally deal with a lot of infernal shit. That's not my way of going. I do some exorcisms, but the exorcisms I have done have been like incubi and things like that are infernal but not really, really evil. I've chased some muertos, some like spirits of the dead, some dead spirits out. But again, they're not like really, really evil. When you're talking about evil, you're talking about demons, things of this nature. I don't personally work with them. I know guys who do like Goetia, like demonic summonings and things like that. That's just not my tradition. The stakes are a lot higher. You got to be a lot more careful. So I don't personally deal with that. And I work I certainly work with spirits that like the Catholic Church might consider evil, but they're not evil spirits. I've felt some bad shit come through, but nothing that I tried to get in touch with. What else we got here? Do you believe in love spells? Do I believe that they work? Yeah, they definitely work. I've done them and they work. Do I believe in doing them? I usually don't do them. I don't personally use them for myself. I don't really accept clients who try to hire me for them. Unless it's a very specific situation. Maybe they got broken up with a spell or something, and it's a marriage, and there's kids involved, and they're suffering. Then I'll do something. They work. The closest to anything like that I have in my life is my wife and I keep a marriage lamp. It is a spell. It is a working, but it's not. When I think of a love spell, usually that's something you do on someone else without them knowing. But my wife and I keep the lamp together, so that's different. Definitely, love spells definitely work. And if you want to check out some good ones, the Book of Saint Cyprian has some very, very good love spells in it, and it's a good tradition to work in. Saint Cyprian was a sorcerer who became ultimately like a Catholic bishop. By the time the books or the information in the book really circulated, it is very much he'd already repented and sort of gone to goodness, and so it's very much he makes a big deal of protecting the worker from any sort of consequences of evil or anything like that in how he conducts the work. These same person with some great questions. What's your inputs on as above, so below? I mean, that's one of the Hermetic axioms. It's good that you're studying Hermeticism. As above, so below means, also as without, so within. That everything recurs on levels. That reality, or at least consciousness, is fractal. That it reiterates the same patterns. That just like in the solar system, the planets go around the sun, in the smallest thing we know, in the atom, the electrons orbit the nucleus. Just as everything has, composition, just as our body has bones, the earth has rocks. It's a statement on analogy and on metaphor, and that sort of thinking is essential, absolutely essential to magical thinking, because all symbolism works that way, and all sort of associative conjurations work that way as well. Do you believe in others' free will when it comes to magic? I don't really know if I believe in free will anymore, honestly. Now that I've been learning astrology, you can defy the stars, and you can defy those energies, but that shit doesn't go well for you. So how much choice do you... I mean, you have a choice, but it's not really a choice. So I don't know if I believe in free will at all anymore, honestly. This is something I've been thinking about for the past few weeks, as events in my life have been like, that's so random, and yet I don't feel like I have a choice here. So free will is an interesting question. But as far as opposing your workings, yes, definitely. And this is why Tauruses and Capricorns are very hard to work. They're very strong-willed, so they can push that off. When you're doing a working, you're working against someone's will and their spirits and things like that. And that's why, the nature of a working is to either overcome them, or, and this is more in keeping with my tradition, trick them. You want to trick them so they think that they want what you want them to want. And if you've tricked them, then it's pretty easy. Then you're going in accord with their will, or in the same direction. In that way, you're not opposing each other. Could you say you're a light worker or dark? I work with both hands. In my tradition, we're called two-headers. I mostly do light work. Just, I got a family and stuff. I don't want to pass or risk passing consequences onto my generations that are not mine to pass. But, if it's the right situation, I'll do the right work. So, meaning, can someone hire me to just, do a curse on someone because they made them mad? No, you can't. There's no way I would do that. There was a time in my life when I would have, but not anymore. But if someone was legitimately wronged, and we'll go through some of these other questions here, can they hire me to do a curse? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. I won't only do blessing and healing work. Let's see what we got here. What's your best zodiac sign you love to work with? Man, Sagittarius placements love me. I'm like crack cocaine to Sag, because I got all this information and shit, and Sages are just trying to roam through that garden of knowledge. So yes, I get along very well with Sages myself. I'm a double Virgo, Libra stellium. But again, you got to look at individual charts. It's hard to just talk about sun signs. I have synastry with a lot of people in a lot of levels on a lot of things. How to crack a fire sign. I assume you're working against a fire sign, well, don't fight fire with fire. Fight fire with water. But in general, I hesitate to give strategic advice here, but one of the great bits of advice from Chinese, ancient Chinese strategy, which is unrelated to the spirituality, it's something I study and I apply a lot in my spiritual workings, especially working against someone. But they say if he's white, whiten him. If he's red, redden him. What does that mean? If he's afraid, make him more afraid. If he's angry, make him more angry. So with a fire sign, redden him. Make him angry. Make him make mistakes. Make him go over the top. Right? If I'm working a fire sign in a court case thing, I'm going to throw a lot of cayenne pepper in there. Hopefully they'll lose their fucking temper in court and the judge will put them in contempt of court. Go with it. With a water sign, you'd never do that. With an earth sign, you'll never be able to. You won't drive them over the edge. A fire sign, that's easy. That's easy. What else we got here? Are you a moon child or sun? I don't even really know what that means. That's not really in my tradition. I can say that I was born on a full moon, and my moon opposes the sun, which is known as the full moon in astrology. All right, what else we got here? Okay, I think that's all. I've run through. Oh, here we go. Okay, how do you go about... This is a really good question. I really appreciate this one. How do you personally go about teaching what you know to your kids? So, to frame it, one of my kids is about to turn 5. The other one just turned 1. So, the 1-year-old doesn't really learn yet. The 5-year-old, it's actually very interesting. I try to tell her as general and non-specific a thing as possible. Meaning, so she obviously asks, right? She sees my saints and things like that and asks what they're about. And I always tell her the truth, but I try not to give her specifics, because the thing is with kids is like they'll hang on to certain words or concepts and maybe they don't understand it fully. It's a little too rich for them. And they hold on to the misunderstanding. So I don't want to give her an opportunity for that. So what I tell her is that, like, my saints... she knows this is Saint Expedite, this is Saint Michael, this is Santa Muerte, so that they remind me of certain things, and that the stories about them tell about them and certain things. And I talk about them like characters, like, as far as she knows, Saint Michael's the exact same shit as Beauty and the Beast, right? Like, they're all characters, but they make you feel certain ways, as she knows. So, and then the offerings, she knows that they remind me of certain things, so that I'm trying to see ideas because I want to feel certain ways or have certain ideas. And so that's the way I teach her about it in general, so as not to just not to push her away or push her too far towards anything. And yeah, I just teach her like stories. I a lot of times like to use the phrase "some people believe" or "I believe," and let her know that there's other ways of thinking about it too. But the deep concepts, man, kids get it. Kids get it. Just like I said, she's the one who came to me about her right hand and her left hand, and kids get sort of spiritual connection. Kids live in a much more spiritual reality, especially at that very young age. So I try to just answer questions and not explain or tell her much, because in a way she sees it much more clearly than I do, because she's still very close to it. Her conscious mind isn't separating things. Oh, we got a good question in chat here. I'll dive in here. In your experience, what are the clearest signs across conditions, and what approaches would you suggest to uncross another's conditions? So, cross conditions is a pretty broad term, because you can cross people in different ways, right? Like, I can cross up your money, I can cross up your love, cross up your health. So, you want to look for persistent problems that don't respond to any sort of normal shit. You want to look for things going like abnormally wrong on a more than one basis. Okay, so it's like, now, how to undo it? I'm a very precise worker. Some people give you general workings. To me, I want to know what's going on, what conditions are crossed. In broad terms, do a revocation. Get a pull-out candle, do a revocation with St. Michael. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It's all over the internet. That's in broad terms. In specific terms, I want to know what condition is being crossed. And I'm going to do a cleansing on that person. I'm going to do a reversal on that. And then I'm going to try to bolster whatever condition has been crossed and sort of nourish that, because it's weakened. All right. What time do you love to do magic? At night. I basically work at night. I got a day job, though. I mean, I got a business I run during the day, so. But I work, I mean, it depends on the work, too. You know, I love the work that I do at night, but, you know, I'll work daytime work, too. I work, as I said in the beginning of this thing, I work with planetary hours, so depending on what the working is, it may be associated, but I work at night usually. Put my kids to bed, maybe I'll take a nap to 11 p.m., wake up, get started, and, you know, go back to bed around, you know, 4 or 5 a.m. That's a common night, you know, night schedule for me. Best cleaning tool used to this day? You know, I like making baths, but the egg cleaning is very good. Egg cleaning is you know, easy, it's cheap, and it works. So I like to use eggs. You know, feet are good, crow feet, chicken feet, all that, fans, all that's good. But the egg's basic. You can get any. You can go to the supermarket and buy an egg for 25 cents. So I'd say if you got to pick one, that's the one. My inputs on aliens. All right, I guess I'll do this. I do believe that it is statistically unlikely that there's no other form in life in the universe. Likewise, I believe that it's pretty unlikely that there would be carbon-based humanoid forms that we would recognize as life. It might just look like a gas or a rock or fucking light to us or whatever. So that's all I'm going to say about aliens. My zodiac sign. I'm a Virgo sun, Virgo ascendant, Pisces moon, Libra stellium. Like I got Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, all in Libra, and then just to keep it interesting, I got that Scorpio Venus. Am I a sigil person? Not really. I work with symbols. I do. It depends, man. If it's very specific for something, yes, but it's not a heavy part of my practice at all. I do parchment work, but it's not what you would consider sigils, really. So no. And I think I've gone through the whole backlog here. So this question I've been waiting the whole fucking time to answer. What's the spell you're working on with a cow tongue and a pork heart? Because many of you have seen my story that I was at the farm today, as I said, buying animal parts. So the pork heart I use for love spells or breakup spells. I don't have anything cooked up right now. Actually, you know, every pig only has one heart, so when I go to the farm, if they got a heart, I'll grab it, because throw that shit in the freezer, it's good whenever. So yeah, the pork heart, I don't have anything cooking. The cow tongue, though, usually we'll use beef tongue, you know, especially in conjure, hoodoo work, on court case to shut someone up. But what I got going on right now is actually, I don't want to reveal too much because I don't really want to reveal the client's situation, but suffice it to say, there's someone who is not a good person, as very, very definitely proven by the research I've done, whose tongue has caused a lot of trouble for other people, and are really, like, not just talking shit, like ruined some people's lives in some real way. And so I was asked to do, is a great example of if I do left-handed work. I was asked if I would do that work. The initial facts of the case seemed to interest to me. I researched the person they wanted me to work on. This is a bad person, without a doubt. I asked my spirits. They gave me a very clear answer. I consulted with my colleagues. They reinforced that answer. I asked my spirits again. They gave me very similar to the first answer, actually, as far as like very similar cards. Gave me a very clear answer. So I said I would take that work, and immediately my spirits gave me this working, which I've not read anywhere, I've never heard before. I'm going to give it to you guys. Don't fucking do it, okay? Because I haven't done it yet, number one, so maybe it'll backfire. Number two, it's kind of inherently dangerous. But the working is, and what I plan to do with at least one of those beef tongues, is to cut it open and prepare it with a name paper, baptize it, connect it to the target. And while it's cold, to get a scorpion and freeze the scorpion so it gets still, put the scorpion in the tongue and sew it up, and then put that on hot coals. So as it heats up, the scorpion wakes up, it's trapped, stings the shit out of the tongue. Then, once the coals are done, to put that in a jar with flesh-eating beetles. I forget the name of them. and to bury that for 3 weeks, and by then the beetles will have eaten the tongue and eaten each other, and all that's left in the bottom is like dust, and to make goofer dust out of that. That's what I'm going to be doing with that tongue. And goofer dust is a kufwa dust, killing dust. It's like a powerful cursing dust. And yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone to do that working. I'm not going to... who knows if I'll actually get to do that working. But again, Spirit gave me that working very much immediately. Told me to go get the tongue. So that's what's going on with the cow tongue. What do we got here? Oh, questions popping up all over the place. When collecting graveyard dirt, is it best to collect dirt from the grave of an ancestor? Yeah. Yep. Because otherwise you got to do a lot of work making friends with that spirit. You can't just roll up and take their dirt. An ancestor even you should still connect with, but if it's a grave, hopefully you visit your ancestors' graves and you pay homage, so you're not a stranger, Definitely best to get dirt from an ancestor. It also depends on what it's for. It depends how you're planning on using that dirt. Not all graveyard dirt's the same. If you need to do some dirty work, unless you got an ancestor who's a murderer, go find a murderer's grave, because you need murderer dirt. So, but yes, collecting dirt from an ancestor is the sort of the most accessible grave dirt for you to use. Also, sleeping on an ancestor's grave, a powerful ancestor's grave, is very austere and old, and actually safe work to do. That's a great question. What's your input on sales? Like on boats? I don't really know anything about that. Can't help you with that. How to get a person who like to reverse things on you when they need to get hit by a spell. So you can reverse back on them, like I said before, do a revocation back on them. But the best thing is to trick up their things, man. Like, if you can't hit them with a spell, like I say, through the air, like with your words and your intentions, and they put that back on you, then put the work in something physical, and then bury it on their property, because they got to dig up the trick to reverse that. Or if you can get to them, like be in their home, if it's someone man, put that shit in their shampoo or whatever, so they rub it on their head every day. But you got to get tricky with it. If they're waiting for you, you can't just hit it through the air like that. There's another one here. What's my zodiac sign? I think I said that. Yeah, I did do that one. Virgo, all that. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's all the questions we got. That was pretty good. And it took just about an hour exactly. Thanks, guys. I had nothing prepared for this one. I was worried that I would not have enough questions. Another one popped up. Sweet, we're going to do an hour exactly here. Do you believe in gargoyle and warding spell? Warding spells, yes. Gargoyles, no. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't work. I'm just saying I don't work with them. Yeah, I mean, like if I need to protect my home, I use, red brick dirt, coffin nails, again, railroad spikes. But I work with St. Michael for protection. He's my protector, and he protects theoretically all of us, but he's especially good. And Santa Muerte, she's, if someone gets by St. Michael, they're not getting by her. So no, I don't personally do that stuff. That's sort of like medieval European magic, and it's just not my traditions. I'm not educated in it. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all. It's just I'm not educated in it, so I can't really speak to it. There are more popping up. Kia Solomon stuff. I mean, if you're not fluent in Hebrew, don't do it. I'll tell you that right now. Because you're going to pronounce stuff wrong. And if you pronounce an angel or a demon's name wrong, then they're not going to listen to you. That's number one. Number two, we learn in Kabbalah that God changes the names of the angels when they're being overused. So you'd be trying to call one angel, you call the other one by accident. So again, it is one of the traditions. I'm not saying you have to be Jewish to do it, but you should go back to the earlier question about working outside your ethnic tradition. You should 150% know Hebrew, know the culture before you approach the tradition. Which ironically, this talk was going to be, if I had no topics, this is going to be a preview of the Hebrew class that I'm doing on Wednesday. But you guys gave me enough questions. But yeah, working. Now, I know guys who don't know Hebrew who work Goisha, but they are serious scholars. You can't just jump into that. And I think also, not everybody's King Solomon. He was the wisest man of his time. One of the wealthiest and most powerful men of his time. He was especially gifted. You can't just jump into Solomonic magic. Though there is a way to work with it. That's what I can say about that. And I don't directly work in Solomonic stuff, but my tradition overlaps very much because I do work in Jewish folk magic, and the roots of it are all with King Solomon. Horseshoes and hex signs. Horseshoes. There's different traditions around them. I work with San Martin Caballero, and the horseshoe is a symbol for him. But the horseshoe, whether right side up, upside down, for luck, very common. Hex signs I don't personally work with. That is Pennsylvania Dutch tradition. It does actually have a lot of overlap with conjure and hoodoo when you get in the 20th century, but it's not. I actually saw a lot of it growing up in the Northeast, but it's not anything I'm educated on, so I won't speak to it and misspeak. I think it's better not to. Best way to heal yourself, like physical against sickness, I usually, for that, I'll work with Santa Muerte. Healing is, we use hospital dirt for healing. But the working itself, it's about being in touch with your body, moving your breath and moving your life energy to the afflicted points in your body. And this is a lot like, at least the way I practice it personally, is a lot like the Taoist systems of moving energy and things like that. Again, I'm not. There's plenty of ways. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So that's just me. A white candle or a blue candle if you're doing candle work. I always use those for medical things. But again, healing can mean a lot of different things, emotionally, physically. What I'm talking about there is specifically medical healing. That's very different than emotional healing or something like this, which I would take a different approach on. Best protection symbols. I use the Star of David, but that's it's my lineage, my heritage. They all work. There's no one that's going to work better than the other, and they all can be worked around. It's not about a symbol's better or this or that. It's the energy you put into it. It's the working you put into it that'll make it stronger or weaker. Do you believe in color magic? I assume you mean like colors on candles or like black magic, white magic. I don't believe in black magic, white magic. Yeah, it's kind of like a loaded term. Colors on candles, yeah, I use it, and colors in general. We recognize a certain number of colors. We've got our eyes and our brain can only recognize a certain number of colors, and they represent different things. You have to train yourself. You have to train yourself to make those connections. It's not just like, oh, you can look at this color and it's going to do that. Just look at all this stuff. If you haven't trained your mind to make those connections with those symbols and to read that into those symbols and to make those associations and to access those energies based on those inputs, then it's worthless. It's all about what you put into it. Sigil magic, I already said. I don't really do sigil magic, so there's people out there who do. I suggest you consult with them. All right, I think we got up. Boom. Does a black sooty candle always mean the work didn't take? Yeah, basically it does. It means you're working against resistance. If it's only on the top part, it means you burned through that resistance. But if that thing burned the whole way black and sooty, don't do that. Finish that. And don't relight that. Go bury that candle somewhere. Throw it at a crossroads. Get that shit out of your house. Try again later. That's what a black sooty candle means. It's weird. It's putting some of the questions at the bottom and some at the top. Have you ever astral traveled? We got 30 seconds left and it's going to cut me off. I have done very, very, very light astral travel. I'm not very, very experienced in it, so I can't speak to it much, but yes, I have a tiny bit. One last question. Thank you. Can I get a follow back? Yeah, I'll give you a follow back. All right, that's going to wrap it, you guys. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I'm going to end this and save it, and it'll be posted on the Patreon. Peace.